problem is that children were dropped. They were abandoned. And their needs, which are not needs that are going to shift because society shifts, because they have irreducible neurological emotional needs. So we know that babies are born neurologically and emotionally fragile. And so what that means is they're not born resilient. And today, what's being projected onto babies is they can handle a lot. They can handle stress, they can handle separation, they can handle you going back to work after 6 weeks or 3 months and leaving them in daycare with strangers, or, and from an evolutionary perspective, babies have always needed the physical skin-to-skin contact with their mothers for the first year. In most parts of the world, babies are born on their mother's bodies because mothers perform a number of really important functions for babies that are biological functions based on our evolutionary need to provide our babies with what we call attachment security. So society took a turn, and it's caused a lot of damage. I mean, this mental health crisis in children, I saw coming 30 years ago, and it was already, I have friends and colleagues like Jonathan Haidt, who says, oh, well, it didn't start till social media, and that's false, because I was seeing this uptick, and if you really look, there was an uptick in mental illness in children going back decades, and it had everything to do with the shift in society towards self-centeredness, towards narcissism, towards individualism, towards me. And so, and I always say that you don't have to have children, period, to have a satisfying life. But if you're going to have children, you need to be equipped to care for them, because having children alone without really understanding what it means to care for them and being prepared to take on that responsibility is causing our children to break down.
Why do you mention mothers and not fathers in that? Because you seem to have an emphasis on the role that a mother plays, and it seems to be more important in your view than the role that a father plays, or maybe even that a nanny or some other caregiver can play. And I noticed that on your first book, which was written in 2017, being there, on the cover it says, why prioritizing motherhood, in bigger letters, in the first 3 years matters. Scientifically, evolutionarily, with studies and research, how can you make the case to me to make me believe that the role of the mother in particular is essential versus a father or other caregiver?
So in fact, in the book, it talks about the difference between mothers and fathers, because that's an important question. And the reason I wrote about mothers is not because fathers are unimportant, but fathers are important in a different way. So there's a whole debate in society about this kind of idea of gender neutrality, that mothers and fathers are interchangeable. But actually, from an evolutionary perspective, as mammals, they're not interchangeable. They serve different functions. And those roles and those behaviors are connected to nurturing hormones. So mothers are really important for what we call sensitive empathic nurturing when children are infants and toddlers. That means that when children are in distress, mothers soothe babies and therefore regulate their emotions from moment to moment. Every time a mother soothes a baby with skin-to-skin contact and eye contact and the soothing tone of her voice, she's leaning into that baby's pain and she is regulating that baby's emotions. And the way I like to think about it is that, when babies are born, they're born emotionally disjointed. Think about sailing in the Atlantic. This is how babies' emotions go. They'll go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds with their emotions. And where we want to get babies is to sailing in the Caribbean, not flatlining, but we want them to be able to regulate their emotions, but they're not born that way. And so mothers, because they soothe the baby from moment to moment, when they're physically and emotionally present enough in the first 3 years, they help a baby to learn how to regulate their emotions. So by 3 years of age, 85% of the right brain is developed. And by 3 years of age, babies can then start to internalize the ability to regulate their own emotions. Now, if mothers aren't present as the primary attachment figures to do that mirroring of emotion, to do that soothing of of their emotions, then babies don't learn how to regulate their emotions. The other thing that's important that mothers do is they buffer babies from stress by wearing them on their body for the first year, and then by being as present as possible for 3 years. They actually protect babies' brains from cortisol, the stress hormone. So there is a hormone called oxytocin. It's the love hormone, and it is protective against cortisol. The more a mother nurtures with sensitive, empathic nurturing, meaning when the baby cries, the mother goes, "Oh, sweetheart, let me see the boo-boo, let me kiss the boo-boo." That actually raises the oxytocin in the baby's brain, which then protects the baby from cortisol.
Can a father do that?
So now, fathers. Why are fathers important? So fathers also produce oxytocin, but it has a different effect on their brain. So for mothers, oxytocin makes mothers sensitive, empathic nurturers, very vigilant to the baby's distress. When fathers produce oxytocin, it comes from a different part of their brain, and it makes them more what we call playful, tactile stimulators of babies. What does that sound like to you?
Playful, tactful stimulators of babies.
Throwing the baby up in the air and tickling the baby and running after the baby and roughhousing. And so that's important for a variety of reasons. First, it encourages things like exploration and risk-taking. It encourages separation. And fathers do this really important thing, which is they help the baby to learn to regulate certain emotions. So mothers help to regulate sadness, fear, distress. Fathers help to regulate excitement and aggression. So when fathers aren't in the house, when there are single mothers raising children without a father, often little boys develop behavioral problems, is what we're seeing, that they can't regulate their aggression, because fathers help little boys in particular, but little girls too, to regulate aggression. So when fathers aren't around, you'll often see little boys who are more impulsive, who are more aggressive. So the answer is fathers and mothers are both critical to the development of children, which is a very controversial thing to say today, because if you're raised without one, you are missing a piece. But they're not the same. And they're not the same because our hormones dictate they're not the same. So fathers produce a hormone in great quantities called vasopressin. Vasopressin is the protective aggressive hormone. And what does it do? It helps fathers to protect their family. There was a study that was done where mothers and fathers lay in bed and the baby cries. It was out of the UK, this study. The baby cries and the fathers sleep through the baby's distress cries, but the mothers wake up right away, okay? But with the rustling of leaves outside the window, the mothers sleep through it and the fathers wake up right away, because the fathers are attuned to predatorial threat. So our nurturing hormones make us different. I mean, the fact that we can say that there are many things that are similar between women and men, of course, we're both intelligent, we can both be ambitious, but I think the idea that we want to kind of make everything the same when it's just not factual. It is the inconvenient truth that mothers and fathers' nurturing hormones dictate that if they are healthy and they've been raised in a healthy environment, they are different. Now, does that mean that a father can't raise a child and be a sensitive, empathic nurturer? It doesn't mean he can't take on that role, but if as a society we can't acknowledge the differences, that a father can't learn to be a sensitive, empathic nurturer, meaning these are instinctual behaviors. And so that infant, if that father is going to stay home with that baby, acknowledging the differences allows that father then to become a sensitive, empathic nurturer.
So interesting, because these aren't the ideas that are socially accepted, or at least the ideas you see on social media. And funnily enough, as you were speaking, I recorded everything you said and I ran it through AI, and AI said the core ideas that you shared are well supported by evolutionary psychology and neuroscience, which is quite surprising because usually AI argues with people.
I mean, so the thing is, none of the books I write are based on opinion. So I'm very skittish about saying anything that isn't backed up with research. So it's everything that I write about and speak about is supported by research.
Why is it that what you say is so troubling for some people? You know why, right? Because it makes us confront a set of realities that...
It's an inconvenient truth, to
inconvenient.
quote Al Gore.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
an inconvenient truth. Sometimes facts are an inconvenient truth, just like, climate change is an inconvenient truth. This is an inconvenient truth. It inconveniences people. It also makes people feel guilty. So I don't believe that guilt is a bad feeling. I don't believe that guilt